Jean-Eric Vergne has claimed the final win in Formula E's first-generation seasons, while Audi have finally taken the team's title, after a scrappy start to the year. This weekend in New York was the last time that Formula E's first generation of cars would race, the final outing for a battery design that has seen the output, power and regenerative limits it could be forced to increase year on year and the final race distance more than double from Season 1. For a series mocked by many at its inception, Formula E has, over its 4, progressively bigger seasons, if not silenced that doubt then made it seem as shrill as a powertrain's acceleration over the noise being made about the championship's growing success. The three drivers on the final podium here, Jean-Eric Vergne, Lucas di Grassi and Daniel Abt, have all been in Formula E since that first, small-seeming season, and perhaps it's appropriate it ends with them. Di Grassi, frustrated by being denied a final victory in the year his title defense, so certain seeming in Valencia testing, faltered and finally mathematically died in Zurich. And Daniel Abt, who many people assumed only had a seat in the season for his family's name being on the now Audi team, carried the factory efforts points during an initially error-strewn campaign. While Jean-Eric Vergne, who said himself on Friday came into this series angry and lost after Formula 1, has gone from his first victory at last year's final race to being the only champion in Formula E ever to seal the title before the last race. It has been a strange weekend, all the stranger as tempestuous weather threatened not just Formula E's first wet race but its first suspended event altogether, local authorities evacuating spectator areas under weather safety concerns between qualifying and the start of the race. Fortunately, the storm over New York changed direction and the event reopened without more serious drama. It's a good metaphor for the end of the first phase for a championship many people can't believe exists and potentially more, especially amongst traditional motorsports fans, think shouldn't. And if Formula E has had anywhere it has ever been able to answer critics, it has certainly been on track. Starts, under electrical torque, or dramatic, the instant ability to use full power means any driver can hit the first corner hard, often into someone else's car. Although for once any direct contact was mostly avoided, both Techeetah drivers, starting second and third, managed to get a spectacular drop on poleman Sebastian Buemi and pass him before turn 2, forcing him back into the reach of the waiting Audis. Spectacular start it truly was, and remains slightly controversial as first André Lauterer, then Vergne came under investigation for jumping the lights. Lauterer was issued a 10-second stop-go penalty that took him out of contention, but lead driver Vergne managed to avoid being penalized, something di Grassi made no bones about thinking was incorrect in the post-race press conference. Nevertheless, with Lauterer out of contention, Techeetah's 5-point advantage in the team battle was looking extremely frail, as Abt and di Grassi moved up the ranks with even Buemi, dominant across the first 3 seasons of Formula E, unable to stop the sheer speed of the Audi cars. Meanwhile, the midfield was where Sam Bird, who until yesterday was the only man who could contend Vergne's title lead, lost second place in the championship. Yes, Vergne's season has been difficult with staff changes including the departure of team boss Alex Ty and a 13 kg overweight car that chugged power inefficiently relative to its front-running peers. Bird had entered the weekend annoyed at the 0.3 km extension to the New York circuit. He'd taken both wins at last year, saying the distance set the advantage against them, and if anyone thought he was damage limiting or attempting to overstate the struggle, the track seemed to shake out the truth of the situation. Bird has fought to the front of circuits where sheer power is less of an issue, but it was clear to see he was falling crucial percentages behind the more efficient cars yesterday and that the DS car simply couldn't convert 200 kilowatts output into speed in qualifying the same way others could. Bird needed to finish within 15 points of di Grassi to keep second in the championship, and with the Audi driver up to second, even as he fought to keep hold of 9th place it looked impossible to move forward. Both Nick Heidfeld, who has had a relatively strong weekend for Mahindra after a huge hiccup for the Indian team in Europe, and Nelson Piquet Jr.'s Jaguar seeming to pull away impossibly. With Vergne holding di Grassi from taking the lead, it remained in reach right until the final laps. The last blow for the chances came when Lauderer, steaming back up the order after his penalty, passed Bird and even mathematical chance discharged itself. It wouldn't be a Formula E race without some contact, and 5 cars never saw the finish line, even laps down. Filippi and D'Ambrosio were both taken out by some slightly bizarre, if dramatic, contact from Da Costa, who plowed into the rear of Filippi, sending him into D'Ambrosio as the Neo driver slowed for a full-course yellow prompted by the other Dragon driver, Lopez's front wing almost catching fire after a brush with the barriers. Tom Dillman, in this weekend for DTM detained Eduardo Mortara, put in a good result yesterday to take 4th place but was stopped early on with a transmission problem, his Venturi teammate Mauro Engel suffering a loss of power in the second half of the race. For the final Formula E race with car change pit stops, there were thankfully no pit lane incidents, although Di Grassi's stop ended up scrappier than the Audi driver would have liked. At the end of the era and a season where the pit stops had become increasingly fraught and incident-strewn, moved to a timed part of racing, a clean finish to the first generation was extremely welcome. Formula E has a lot to be proud of from its first generation. Not least, 4 different champions, 4 very differently fought titles and technological advances that are staggering even within the context of a series being driven by the urgency of broader automotive change, against a ticking global clock. If Formula E's greatest achievement, though, has been survival, then that's no mean feat or a limited ambition. Creating any new series is difficult. Creating a new series that relies on technology only reluctantly being adopted and riding a wave of change driven more by staggering fear than hope, environmentally and economically, is this sort of proposition it's difficult to make entertaining. You can stare into oblivion on a vertical drop roller coaster, but it wouldn't have the same appeal if you didn't know there were mechanisms there to catch you. This void squeaks back at you. While any racing series will always have its detractors, from Formula 1 fans who can't stand WEC to motive fans who think car racing is no kind of sport, Formula E is doing something. At the end of its first generation, it's not facing a tipping point brink into desperate new measures, regulations, tweak to up its appeal, or try to rescue an audience. Formula E enters its second era, as no doubt Vergne and Di Grassi will sim a Hugo Boss event later tonight, with its head held high, a threshold crossing rather than a panicked redirection. You might not like the architecture, but the street ahead's been built now. Page 2 posted on the 16th of July 2018, 026, full-size 4,368 x 2,912.